I just wanted some clarification on tithing.
Being enabled to forgive somebody who causes an offense
Does
towards
it really matter whether someone is Protestant or
The
Catholic?
genealogies are different from Matthew to Luke.
I was wondering what the Bible said in terms of what I should do.
This is Pastor's Perspective. We're here every Monday through Friday providing answers on a variety of topics, including the Bible, end times, other religions, and the family. Call right now with your question at 1-888-564-6173. That's 888-564-6173. You can also post your question at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. And now,
not special. It's just that he's man. Can we not mean it that way? Please don't take it that way. I just mean you're here all the time. So never mind. I think I'll just leave. Well, but we do have a special guest who's not with us all the time. It is Ray Bentley, the pastor at Maranatha Chapel in San Diego.
Hola.
Hi, sir.
How are you doing?
¿Cómo está?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Sí.
Mi hermano.
Sí.
All right.
Nice.
We're close to the border, man.
Yes, yes. Ray is the author of a new book called On the Mountain of the Lord, which is available everywhere fine books are sold. It's also available as an audiobook, and you read it in Spanish, right?
No,
okay.
I read it in English, but I actually read it, and I had a blast doing it.
Yay.
It was awesome.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because the person that's normally sitting in that chair on Friday, Cheryl Brodersen, next week, she's going to start reading her new book that is not yet released.
Ooh.
But it's just now coming out. God's something about grace. Great book. But anyway, I took her to the airport this morning, and on the way she was practicing. So she was reading, she read a page or two, and I said, honey, you just do just what you just did and you're going to be fine. But it's kind of a task,
It
right?
is.
Right?
It's daunting, especially because I wrote a novel, so there's characters. Do you try to do their voices? They're from England, from Israel, So
Right.
I did my best. I just, hey, this is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't go for the accents, though, right?
Just slightly.
Just a little
but
bit.
I didn't try to, go too crazy. So, but man, it was fun. It's fun.
That's great.
That is good.
Cool. So occasionally here on Fridays, we do a program where we have an author in and we talk about their book. So we did that a while back with Miles McPherson, and Ray actually was in the studio with us for that.
Yep.
And just prior to that, we did Ed Stetzer and his newest book, Christians in the Age of Outrage. So it's great to have you with us today, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be
It's
together.
good to be here.
So I thought, why don't we just kind of, you can walk us through the book. You know this already. Cheryl read the book.
Yes.
She loved it. And Cheryl's great because she reads stuff and then she kind of gives me like a book report, so she kind of tells me the details. So I got some secondhand stuff from her. Her biggest praise, Ray, about the book was she said when you got into the kind of Bible stuff, not to say that the other part wasn't good too, but she said there was just some phenomenal stuff in there when you really got into the Bible kind of stuff, like Elijah and some of the different characters. She thought it was just tremendous.
Well, that's cool, because that's kind of the part that I actually was writing about. And then Bodie and Brock, they are story, Bodie is this great story writer, great storyteller.
Let's talk about Bodie Taney for a second,
Okay.
because she's amazing.
Sure.
And years ago, my first exposure to Bodie Taney was the Zion Chronicles
yes.
and the Zion Covenant.
Yeah.
Right? She wrote those two series. The Zion Chronicles being about the battle for independence
Yes.
and the reestablishing of the state of Israel and so forth. And then the Zion Covenant actually preceded it chronologically because it went back to Europe and to the Second World War. And it was like historical fiction,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
And I remember reading the Zion Covenant, and I was up 3, 4 in the morning. I could not go to sleep. I could not put these books down. They were so riveting. So that was my exposure to Bodie. So when I heard that you were writing a book together with her, I thought, wow,
Yeah.
that is great.
Well, her husband does the research, and Bodhi is, Jewish. She's of Jewish background. Obviously, she's a believer. But she and her husband are very meticulous to go into the history, real stories, real people, real events, and then they weave it into a novel. So you're learning a lot of stuff. Yeah. It's woven into a story that they're, but everything is based on real stuff. Yeah. And what we did for this one then, I had this idea about the mountain of the Lord. It's kind of a theme. For me, a few years ago when I was reading Ezekiel, I don't know why, but I never knew that the Garden of Eden was on top of a mountain. And that in Ezekiel 28, when he's talking about the king of Tyre, but really the prince behind the king of Tyre was Satan. And he talks about, you were in Eden, the holy mountain of God. So all of a sudden, it kind of formed in my mind, wow, so Adam and Eve, we, humanity, literally began on the top of a mountain, and we were in paradise, and we're walking with God, and the glory of God. It's kind of like heaven and earth touched on the top of the mountain. Sin comes, and symbolically we get kicked out, not only of the garden, but we have to come down the mountain and descend out into the howling wilderness, thorns and thistles. So the whole story of the Bible then becomes God, lonely and wanting reconciliation, leaving the garden, sending his son, coming down the mountain, coming from heaven to the earth, walking into the thorns and thistles of humanity through his incarnation, grabbing Adam and Eve by the hand, and literally walking us back up and then back into the Garden of Eden, fellowship with him. So that's what I discovered, that many of the most powerful biblical moments of divine revelation, I think that's why they happen on mountains, whether it's the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, fire from heaven, Mount Carmel, Jesus' most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mountain, the Mount of Olives is Mount Zion, the holy mountain of God.
So Mount of Transfiguration.
The Mount of Transfiguration with Moses and Elijah. Yeah. So what I wrote about were these stories. We kind of use Elijah as a character that comes to this younger guy. He's in his 30s, and a tragedy has happened. He's kind of lost his faith in God, and he doesn't believe in the Bible and old men with beards walking the desert having visions about the end times. But he's on this committee that's proposing peace, and he goes to the Middle East. He's trying to be neutral on all of that. But through a series of divine supernatural revelations, he meets this Elijah character that kind of takes him, and using the mountains of the Lord, past, present, and future, he's given a divine insight into, current events. And Bodhi and Brock had never done a novel on current times. They've always done historical past. Yeah. So that's when I came to them and said, hey, you've never done this before. I don't know why, but I would like to do one about current events right now, what's happening, and let's walk into what, is unfolding before us. And so they were very excited and said, we'd love to do it. And we did it.
Yeah. Well, of course, we don't want you to give the whole story away, because then no one would need to go out and buy the book, right?
Yeah.
But we do need to get a little bit of insight into what we can expect as we open the pages of this book. Now, for anyone who knows you, Ray, you are very passionate about Israel. You're very passionate about Bible prophecy. These are things that you just are kind of, marinating in all the time. You and I have been to Israel together. It's a fantastic experience. I love to watch you in Israel because it's like you're at home. You're just there. You love it, and I love it too. And, but you love it on a different level.
Well, I don't know, Brian. You have grown into a new. You're
no, I have. I agree. No,
you're with me, I think.
I'm loving it every trip that I take. And by the way, we're taking a trip in May, and that was, Brian Perez this morning on Back to Basics. At the end of Back to Basics, it was the Israel commercial.
Yes.
Right on the end of my program.
Yes.
The program ends Bob Shaw comes on and says a few words, and then they do the Israel promo again. So somehow we got to get the. You don't need 2 Israel programs or promos with
maybe
30 seconds in between.
Yeah.
So, I'm just telling you for program purposes because I just remembered that's what happened this morning when I was driving in my car and listening to that. So, Ray, let's talk about the kind of just the content of the book without giving away the whole thing, and then let's talk about obviously the book has much to do with prophecy and with the future. So well, like I say, there's a young guy named Jack Garrison. He's 32 years of age, and he basically is on this committee that is helping to propose peace in the Middle East, and he gets drawn over there. Well, he has a friend, Lev Sykes, that was a friend from college that happened to be Jewish but was a believer, who's making Aliyah. So they kind of play, this kind of friendship where he's trying to propose peace. He's got a friend who actually lives there. And then in the whole story, there's a romance to this thing. There's this young Israeli, policewoman, actually special forces woman, that is kind of given to Jack to watch over him and protect him because he's very important, going to make recommendations. They want to show Israel in the most favorable light. So there's the beginning of a romance that happens between this young Jewish lady and Jack. That's all woven into the story. So there's history. You're going to get history, current events. Literally, the book begins kind of with the prologue of what happened back in 1948 that plays into the story, with the kind of this lunar eclipse that's happening that's actually historical, related to the rebirth of Israel. And they're wondering, what does this mean and what will happen? And then all of a sudden, you've got our president that is moving the embassy from Tel Aviv for the very first time to Jerusalem. And this is in the book. I mean, this is fresh. This is current. Is it President Trump or is it?
It is President. Yeah, we decided to use
to use
instead
the
of somebody that we know who it is.
Yeah,
it's President Trump. Okay. So he's in there, and the move of the embassy and the impact of that it would happen. I mean, what are the odds that, forget Trump, any president from, what are the odds that exactly on the 70th anniversary year of the modern rebirth of the nation of Israel, that such a, this decision was made in 1995, and Brian, that it was, both Democrats and Republicans together united, which is shocking in times like right now when they're so divided, but they both said, no, we should move our embassy to the actual capital of Israel, which is Jerusalem, not Tel Aviv. So in 1995, everybody agreed, left and right, but then they said, but wait, let's not sign it because maybe peace will break out between the Israelis and Palestinians. So they would wait, and then they would, nothing would happen, and they would keep kicking the can down the road from 1995 until 2017. But all of a sudden, we get a president who says, we're not waiting. We're doing it. And, America is the biggest, most powerful nation, militarily, economically, influence on planet Earth. And when we move our, in the 70th anniversary, I think that triggers anybody who has read the Bible, studied Israel, understands, prophecy. There's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the book is right in the midst of that. And so history, prophecy coming together, visions and revelations. Mm-hmm. Jack's not a believer, but God said he's going to pour out his spirit on all flesh. So we use visions because that's what God prophesied would happen. And I realize that, God doesn't just talk to Christians. He doesn't just give dreams to believers. He doesn't just use dreams and visions for those who know the Lord. The Bible tells us that Pharaoh, who had, most powerful man on the planet in Egypt, God needed to talk to that guy. And God spoke to that guy through a dream. Another guy, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, well known to the Bible teachers, most powerful man on the planet, made a statue of himself, said bow down and worship it. And the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and all that. But God needed to talk to that guy because of his position, his power, his influence. And God gave that guy a dream, a prophetic dream. Daniel was the only one that could, give the understanding. So to me, I think the same thing's happening now, Brian, that there are a lot of people that are seeing the handwriting on the wall. Again, an illustration taken from the book of Daniel. Like Belshazzar, the king, saw a hand writing on the wall. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. They see the signs. They see the handwriting on the wall, but they don't know how to interpret it. And Belshazzar, had to bring out that the old man, the prophet from his grandfather, and Daniel said, I know what that means. And so I think Christians are in an exciting time where people feel something in the air. There's obviously a lot of tension, a lot of division, a lot of stuff happening geopolitically, let alone the Middle East and Israel and the situation there. But, how do we interpret these things? So anyway, the book is going to give you an interesting ride.
Yeah. Now, this is the first. This is a series, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to do 3 in the series?
At least. Yeah. It's a trilogy.
Okay, yeah. Now, has anyone in Israel read this book yet that you know of?
Not that I know of, but they should. I'd love to get it, out to them. I mean, I should get it to our contacts, the guys that we know.
Yeah, Joel Rosenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't read it yet. He needs to read it.
He needs to read it.
Brian, you need to read it.
I know I do.
You need to read it. And or at least listen to me read it to you as you drive around or something.
The problem, Ray, is I've got a stack of books this big on my desk that I have to read. But honestly, when it came in, we had the pre-published copy,
Yeah.
So that's what Charles read. But then when I saw it, I thought, wow, it's a nice looking book, and it kind of was drawing me in. Like, I need to just read this because it sounds like a engaging story. And of course, it was written by my friend, so I should read my friend's book. But I haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay, all right.
I will.
The pile's going to evaporate.
Hopefully this year, but that's only a few weeks.
Oh man, not saying much.
No, I don't want to put that pressure on.
Well, it's and it's manageable. I mean, just looking at the size, it's not one of those tomes, that you're going to.
Honestly, it's a great the story. Well, Brian, you read it.
Yes, I did.
Didn't you like this? Then the story. The story.
Yeah, it was a good story all
now,
around.
When
When
did you read it?
A few months ago.
Oh, did you?
I got a copy of it. I think it was the last time you were here, and because you signed it for me and everything, so I read it. And yeah.
Well, I didn't even know that. So I'm the only person in the room that didn't read it. Ray
Assuming Ray read it,
but you liked it.
I liked it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was like I was saying. It brings in history so that it makes it more. You talk about the modern age, and then you can kind of, okay, I see how that. It just made it a lot more relatable.
Yeah,
in my opinion. But it's a good book, On the Mountain of the Lord by Ray Bentley and Bodie Taney.
So you said there are 3 mountains that you're kind of viewing things from, right?
No, not 3 mountains. We're multiple mountains.
Multiple.
Past, present, and future. So that's kind of the theme of the book is he keeps having these visions. And they happen to be the mountains. Because really, you can tell the story of prophecy from the stories of the mountains, both past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what the concept is. And it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So how's the book actually doing? Is it selling?
Yes, it is doing very, very well. I don't have the exact numbers on it. But, I mean, for the first 3 or 4 months, I don't know, over 15,000, 16,000 copies.
Yeah.
So it's, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
And
today people are hearing us talk about it, and I bet you get a few more.
Yeah.
And it's available as an ebook also?
Yes, it's available as an ebook. That's real simple, real quick, and
which is great for people who don't like getting paper cuts.
Yeah. But, yeah. And then there's the audio version. Look, I know there's some people I don't have time to read, but I do a lot of driving. So let me read it to you. It'll just take you a couple of days, and you can go through it and really enjoy it. So the audio version's out, and then the book copy, which some people want to, they want to turn the pages and read it.
And it's raybentley.com where people can pick it up?
Yes, raybentley.com, and then also Maranatha store.net, I think, is the one. Is that it? Anyway, but yeah, raybentley.com, it should come up and you can buy it. And I think if you go through that, you get it $1 cheaper than even Amazon. But anyway,
Nice. And we'll put a link on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
By the way, this is Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by California Baptist University Online and Professional Studies, CBU Online, Live Your Purpose. Brian Perez here with Pastor Brian Brodersen from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and our special guest, Ray Bentley, pastor of Maranatha Chapel, San Diego. And you also hear him on the Maranatha radio program. And Ray has written several books, including his latest, the one that we've been talking about, On the Mountain of the Lord.
So, Ray, I've just been on my own, Bible reading time. I'm in the prophets right now, and I'm actually in Amos currently. But I just read Daniel again a week ago or whatever it was. And I got to tell you, man, every time I read the book of Daniel, I just walk away just more convinced. Not like I really need to be any more convinced, but just in that sense, just more convinced and convicted about just the reality of everything that's declared there. Those amazing prophecies,
Amazing.
Starting in the second chapter with Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue, and then Daniel's interpreting that and how, basically history, especially as it pertains to Israel, is just spelled out in advance.
Yes.
And then, when you get into the 7th chapter, you have basically the same interpretation with a little more detail, just a different kind of an experience where Daniel has a dream of the beast. So Nebuchadnezzar, basically the dream is a vision of the kingdoms of the world. The head of gold, that's you, Nebuchadnezzar. The arms and chest of silver, that's going to be the Medes and the Persians. And then the Greeks are going to come with the brass, the belly and the thighs, and then the legs and feet of iron and clay in the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And then the massive rock that's not made with hands that smites it all in the feet. And, the thing just becomes... it's ground to powder and just blown away by the wind, and then the rock that strikes it becomes a kingdom that fills the earth, and then of course, in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom. And man, I'll tell you, reading that stuff again, I'm just like, Lord, this is just like you said. It's just unfolding. Right before our eyes.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Well, and one of the things, that God would lay out, and by the way, no other religion has the number and accuracy of Bible prophecy laying out the future. No. The validity of the God of the Scriptures is that He knows the future, has, prophesied the future, and let us in on the highlights. As you say, from the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Grecian Empire, these are world empires, and then the Roman Empire. And then at the end, these 10 toes, fragments of that. Yeah. And I was hearing something recently, with all the technology of the phone and social media and all of that, in China, they're now going to be giving people a social media score. I think it's going to be by 2020, if I heard it accurately, that they're going to be able to determine, did you watch things that are permitted? Have you written anything that we don't accept or is negative about the government? And so you can lose opportunity for business or for loans or for visas and all of that. The capacity to take over 1 billion people and kind of socially control them. It's here. It's not. This is not science fiction like could be someday. It's actually here. And so you can imagine globally, whatever, God forbid, the next wars are that are so devastating and so ugly that the aftermath would be, look, we've got to use the technology we have to control people so the bad guys and terrorists can't do what they have done. And I can see that is going to be used.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who has a really in-depth knowledge of China, and I was asking them, like, okay, I understand that you have the population centers in China where everybody's got a phone, and you could kind of get everybody on board in Beijing or in Shanghai or some of these places, but there's 1.5 billion people in China. They're spread out all over the place. They're not all in the city centers. So I'm talking more like the peasant population and stuff. And And this person said, the reality is everybody has a phone. It doesn't matter if they're in the heart of Shanghai or if they're in a field somewhere. Everybody is connected, and that's intentional.
Yes.
On the part of the government.
Yes.
For that very reason of controlling.
Yes.
And what we know from the scriptures, Daniel tells us this, and of course the book of Revelation really even spells it out more clearly, that there is going to be a person who comes along and is literally going to take control of the whole world.
Yes.
And control what you can buy, control what you can sell, control what you eat and can eat, and all of that kind of stuff. And like you said, man, this isn't science fiction like it was, 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, we were guessing back in the 70s.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff you could see trends. Yeah. But now, it's reality.
Yeah, and I think even still, because we talk, I think somebody recently asked about the, is the mark on the right hand of the forehead, is that real? Is that going to happen? Yes, it is. It's real. It's going to happen. It's going to be, I think, clearly on the right hand or forehead. But what it's going to be is yet to be seen because technology is changing so rapidly. So, we used to, finally come to the point of thinking, well, it's a microchip. They're going to insert it under your skin. But that's like old technology now, right? I mean, they got way more creative ways of doing stuff like that. And, man, who would have ever dreamed? Because we used to talk in the 70s and 80s and 90s and all the way through, we talked about globalization. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it more in the political sense, and of course that is what the UN is about, and that is what the EU to some degree is about. It is about globalization. But we never really thought of it in the individual sense, how do people individually get on board with globalization? Right. It's already happened.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look.
I'm globally connected right here.
Well, what's interesting about, the cell phone, like you said, not only in China, but I've gone to Africa. I've been in South Sudan where they live in mud huts and everybody's walking around with this thing. I'm serious.
Everybody's watching YouTube in their mud hut.
So who developed the technology behind the phone? You go all the way to the beginning. It was literally created by our military to be able to put a small, light computer to guide the missiles back in World War II. You add to that, then you come along with, Steve Jobs and even Bill Gates. They basically took technology developed by our military and then, came up with the ideas of the phone and computers and programs and all of that. But even GPS, that was created by the military. Here this thing. Yeah. We're at war, and basically this is the Roman roads by which either the gospel or the kingdom of darkness are traveling all over the world, and it's united us. So
yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And if you want to see any Westerner have just immediate anxiety, just find somebody that walked out the door without their phone.
Yep, I know.
It's like panic.
It is
right.
You're cut off.
I came to church, was it last Sunday or the Sunday before? And I left my phone at home on the dresser. Now I'm coming to church to preach, so that's okay because I'd usually just set it on my desk anyway. But I got to church, pulled up, and reached for my phone where I normally put it, and it wasn't there. And I was like,
panic, right?
Oh, my goodness, I didn't bring my phone.
I know. Yep.
Well, my watch is connected to my phone, so there is a little bit of an argument there because my watch won't pick up stuff if my phone's not around. But I did survive for about 5 hours without my phone.
Wow. Wow, that's a miracle.
Yeah,
that's a modern-day miracle.
It was pretty amazing. But, hey, I got home as soon as I could. I can't talk to you. No, you need prayer? Sorry. Here, get one of the assistant pastors. Yeah. I got to get home and get my phone.
You're listening to Pastor's Perspective. I'm Brian Perez here with Pastor Brian Brodersen of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and Pastor Ray Bentley from Maranatha Chapel in San Diego. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to open up the phone lines for prophecy questions. If you've got a question about prophecy, give us a call. That's what we're going to devote the entire second hour to, prophecy questions. The phone number again, 888-564-6173. So go ahead and give us a call now. The phone lines are open. You can also watch us if you'd like on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. That's where we're airing this video live right now. And what do you guys think of maybe the mark on the hand being maybe the Apple Watch, since everybody's walking around wearing it on their wrist?
No, because it's the right hand. And
well,
I want
maybe
you to notice
that's true.
Most people wear their watches on their left hand unless they're left-handed.
That's true. Okay, never mind that. There goes that conspiracy theory. All right, we'll be back with your questions on prophecy coming up in just a little bit.
Pastor's Perspective continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pastor's Perspective continues with your question to 1-888-564-6173. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
And Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by California Baptist University Online and Professional Studies, CBU Online, Live Your Purpose. Brian Perez here with Pastor Brian Brodersen of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and our guest, Ray Bentley, the pastor of Maranatha Chapel in San Diego, California, also the author of the new book, On the Mountain of the Lord, co-written with Bodie Taney. And we're going to put a link to the book on the Pastor's Perspective Facebook page, so check that out in just a little bit. Also, you can watch this right now as it happens on facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. So for the rest of the hour, we're going to take your prophecy questions at 888-564-6173. Ready, guys, to answer some of those questions? Or?
Yeah, but before we do that, let's. I just wanted to talk with Ray for just a little bit more about. We just mentioned the book of Daniel, but let's talk, Ray, about Daniel chapter 9 for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel chapter 9, such a critical prophetic word there. About the actual time, from the time that the command is given to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of Messiah, the Prince, shall be, and then the number,
the breakdown.
Yeah, the breakdown of the days, 173,880 days.
Wow, gold star.
Yeah,
that's
memorized that.
I know, me too.
40 years ago.
Yes.
and it's one of the few things I still remember.
That's great.
So that begins with Artaxerxes, right? The command to Nehemiah to restore, rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Yeah. 173,880 days later, 483 years later.
Yes.
You come to approximately 32 AD. Yes. You come to maybe even April. And you come to the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem.
Yeah, there was Sir Robert Anderson wrote a book where he had figured it out by the Jewish calendar, which is by the moon more than by just the sun. And he said it was the day that Jesus rode on the donkey, the triumphal entry. That was, 173,880 days later.
Yeah.
Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Yeah. But then it says in the prophecy there, it says, Messiah shall be cut off.
Cut off.
But I've been reading the NIV lately, and the NIV says Messiah shall be killed.
Yeah.
Very specifically killed, which
Yes.
of course cut off is that's what it means.
That's exactly what it means. And that was prophetically what would happen, that the Messiah, and that was a revelation that only came to be fully understood and appreciated after Jesus came, died, and rose from the dead. And that the kingdom will have two aspects. The first time, the spiritual aspect as the Lamb of God, and the second one as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And I think we're getting very close to that.
Yeah, so in that prophecy, though, there's 70 sevens determined upon Israel. So the cutting off the Messiah takes you through 69 of the sevens.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
And seven is, heptad is the Hebrew word, meaning like a
period of 7 years.
Period of seven, something.
Yes.
And in this case, obviously, it's years, right?
Yeah.
So where's the 7 years? Where's that other 7 years? So 69 of them happened, but there were 70 that were determined.
Right.
So where's the 70th?
Yeah. So that's what we believe, that the whole book of Revelation is about those final 7 years. And in fact, it's clearly delineated. 42 months, 1,260 days, 3.5 years. It says it about 3 different ways.
Yeah.
In 2 halves, the first half, the second half. That's that final period. And what are we waiting for to trigger that? I believe is a peace deal between the Israelis and ultimately their neighbors. And I find it very, very interesting that we now have a president, not only who has moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, but who says early next year he's got a plan to bring peace to Israel and to the Palestinians. It's going to be very interesting to see what that, because many have tried, but it hasn't been the right time. The further things go along, are we getting close to the time where maybe God allows that? And
so now we got the guy who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal.
Well, exactly. Yeah, that's what he's known for, is the art of the deal.
Who would have ever guessed?
Right.
That he has, look, he has a Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who's, got contacts both on the American side and the Israeli side that, hey, let's see what happens.
Yeah. What was Trump's show on TV? What was it called?
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. That is all pretty darn wild. But there's another component there too, Ray. Yes, peace with the neighbors and so forth. But implied, not stated, but implied in the text is that the temple is going to be rebuilt.
Yes, yes.
And
I know.
And then not only is the temple going to be rebuilt, but the sacrificial system is going to be reinstituted.
Yes.
And it's going to be in the middle of the week. So the 3.5 year period that something happens in that newly built temple with those sacrifices. What happens then?
Well, that's where basically, this character stands up, declares that he is God, stops the sacrifices, and literally at that moment all hell breaks loose. We call him the Antichrist. There's a spirit of Antichrist, but there's a person that actually, I think, gets possessed of the devil. It's almost like the devil has a plan to imitate the Trinity. There's the devil himself, there's the Antichrist, then the Antichrist has a false prophet that brings the world religiously together under one banner. You've got a political thing under the Antichrist. You've got the devil who is inspiring all of that, and
Yeah, and I just want to keep following this thread because then there's another component to it here, and it just gets deeper and deeper because Paul in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he basically talks about the same thing. He uses a little bit different terminology, but he talks about this man of sin, the son of perdition, who he's going to. Basically, it's there that he tells us he will go into the temple of God, claiming that he is God, and but then Revelation chapter 13 even drills down further to it, showing us that the false prophet will make an image to the other guy, who we commonly call the Antichrist, right? The Bible calls the beast, usually. He's going to make an image to him, and the image is given the power to speak.
Yeah.
Now, think about what's happening with artificial intelligence today.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, it's all of this stuff where you just wonder, and I'm not saying it that's what it is, but I'm just saying like, wow, like now, when we were kids watching whatever it was, Star Trek or Lost in Space, even before that funny show, all of this stuff, even their depictions of the future were so unlike what they actually have become, right?
Yeah.
And the robot, the guy walking around, like the Tin Man. But and now, now they're showing robots who I was watching this thing the other night where they've got these robot things now where you can actually have a robot making your appointments for you. So say you let your robot thing know, your artificial intelligence know, I need a haircut. So they will call the hair cutter salon, and they will make you the appointment. But the person on the other end, the living person, would never know they're talking to a robot because they're talking like a regular person. Like, hey, I need a haircut today. You got any time? Yeah. Well, what time are you thinking? Let me think. I was thinking, and this is like the artificial intelligence doing all of this stuff, talking just like an actual another human being. So forget that. I would like to make an appointment. That's all over. Now they talk just like everybody else.
And it won't be long before you get to the salon and it'll be a robot giving you the haircut.
Well, that's the next thing I was going to tell you. It actually is a robot. No, I'm just kidding.
888-564-6173 is the number to call us today if you've got a prophecy question. I'm here with Pastor Brian Brodersen and Pastor Ray Bentley.
But all of that to say, who would have ever dreamed that all of this would kind of come so quickly?
Yes. I think that is the most shocking thing is that as we close in, I mean, literally, we're looking at 2019.
Yeah.
And then from 2019, that's the ramp into a whole new decade where I think the impact of some of the artificial intelligence, politically, geopolitically, what's happening on the ground in the Middle East and with Israel and their neighbors, this schism in Islam between Sunni and Shia, how it's driving the Sunnis to kind of work out something with the Israelis. I mean, it's all converging, and man, I'm telling you, it's amazing.
Now there are those, Ray, who they're Christians and sometimes even leaders and teachers that kind of just look at the whole thing with Israel and the Middle East, and they say, this just doesn't mean anything, really. It's not prophecy. It's not a fulfillment of prophecy. It's just the course of the way things go among the nations. It's just geopolitics. Whenever I hear guys say that, I just think, man, have you read the prophets? Because when I read the prophets, just reading them, just taking them at face value, I mean, obviously there are places where you can spiritually apply them, but when you just look at it at face value, if God is clear about anything, it's that Israel as a national body has a future, has an eternal future. And, as I'm reading through the prophets, I'm always looking, because obviously some of the prophecies have already been fulfilled, not just the prophecies about Jesus, but lots of prophecies about the captivity and about the return even from the captivity. But I'm always looking to see the passages as I'm reading. I'm like, okay, has this happened yet? And there's so many times where you look at the whole picture and say, no, this has not happened yet. So this is talking about the future. Because one of the things that the Lord always says is something like this. I'm just paraphrasing. But in that day, Israel will know that I am their God. They will never depart from me again. I'll put my law in their mind and their hearts and that kind of thing. And it'll be done, final, and there'll never be another, rebellion, captivity, or anything like that. A lot of the prophecies make that clear that that's the ultimate outcome, which has not happened yet.
It has definitely not happened. Yeah. And, just as there is a spirit of anti-Christ, now that's been around for 2,000 years. That is a demonic spirit that is against Christ, saying, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father except through me. There's something very powerful and exclusive in the gospel itself. But that same spirit, since Israel had everything to do with the first coming, they actually have everything to do with the second coming. So there's not only anti-Christ, there's anti-Semitism. Yeah. That is, at the UN, it's like out of bounds of being normal. So there's a spiritual element that's behind it.
Yeah, wasn't it yesterday in the UN that there was a failure to acknowledge that Hamas is a terrorist organization?
Yeah, you would think it would be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I think that it's fascinating, a couple of hundred countries in the world, and the one country that has more sanctions against it and attacks and papers and things written is Israel, the size of the state of New Jersey. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And, we've been to Israel many times. And of course, there's injustice everywhere, right? There's no place. I mean, we can go 2 miles down the street here and we can find some injustice. Yeah. So it's not a perfect place. But my goodness, I mean, all those sanctions from the UN, you would think, boy, what are they doing over there that we're not seeing?
And you know what it underscores is Bible prophecy is legitimate. It says this is God's special land. Those mountains are the mountains that God visited and gave the commandments and poured out his Holy Spirit, and Christ was buried and resurrected, ascended, where he's coming back. Mm-hmm. And so it's contested land because of that.
Yep, and it will be right down to the end.
Yeah.
And what was I reading? Either Joel or I'm in Amos right now. I read Joel a couple of days ago, and there is that part. No, I think it's in Joel, where he talks about gathering all the nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? Mm-hmm. And multitudes in the valley of decision. So God's bringing all these nations, and he's going to bring a judgment upon them. And one of the things that it says there is because they divided up my land.
Yes.
And you think, that's what it's like. Yes. No, wait, this is we're going to take this. This is going to belong to us. And God says, no, I'm going to judge you because you did that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to make Jerusalem a heavy, burdensome stone for all the kings of the world.
Yeah.
They're going to try to lift it, solve it, and they can't. And, here we are.
Yeah.
Jerusalem right in the middle of it all.
We are here. Okay. Well, it looks like we do have some questions. So
all right. Let's get to as many of these as we can in the next few minutes. We'll start with Leo in Massachusetts. Hey, Leo. Thanks for calling Pastor's Perspective. You're on with Brian Brodersen and Ray Bentley.
Good evening. My question is about Esdras made a prophecy on Esdras 1 about Cyrus. And it says it got it from the mouth of Jeremiah. But the prophecy I was able to find it on Isaiah 44. So it says it's in Esdras 1:1, and the number 2 is that does that mean that also Esdras, because if Esdras is saying Esdras comes before in order in the Bible before Isaiah and Jeremiah, so how could Esdras be saying anything that comes from these other two? Does that mean the placement of the prophets in the Bible, does that mean that that's how they were chronologically?
Great question, and the answer is no. They are not in chronological order. And Ezra is actually after the captivity. Ezra comes back to the land after the 70 years of captivity. But yes, in your Bible, it appears earlier because it's classified in the historical section versus the prophets that are in the prophet section. So even when you look at Isaiah, Jeremiah, of course Isaiah precedes Jeremiah and Ezekiel both, but then and then Daniel comes later. But then you go to Hosea and you're kind of back in Isaiah's time when you get to Hosea. So it bounces around chronologically.
All right. Leo, thanks for your phone call. Here's one from Josie in Rialto. Hey, Josie, thanks for calling.
Hi. Good afternoon, pastors.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
Okay. My question is it possible for, like myself, to have dreams regarding my own life, not what's going to happen in the world, but what will be happening in my life, that God can reveal to me or alert me for different things? Because I have been having dreams for a long time, and I don't know what they mean.
All right. Ray, what would you say?
Well, I would say this. Clearly, yes, the Bible does say that God will pour out his Spirit on all flesh, and they shall dream dreams, and they shall have visions. So it's a way of talking to us. It's our own thoughts. Dreams can be a combination of our own thoughts, our experiences, our past, our history, but it's a place in our minds, and God talks to us in our minds. He can speak to our thought life. He can speak to our emotions. He can bring things to us. Now you need to take those, to the Word. I wouldn't say that God tries to guide our lives through, prophecy, like He does in the Bible, telling us the future as much as He does. It's prophetic. God wants to speak to us, or God wants to say something to us, or yes, He could be highlighting something or warning you something. It'll always confirm His Word. So read the Bible and fit whatever dream you have into the truths of the Bible, the statements of the Bible that may apply to what you're currently going through or experiencing. Does that make sense, Josie?
Hold on, let me get her back on. Does that make sense, Josie?
Yes, it does.
All right. Thank you so much for your question today on Pastor's Perspective. We're doing a prophecy program today, 888-564-6173, with Pastors Brian Brodersen and Ray Bentley. Here's Demetrius in North Las Vegas. Hello, Demetrius. Thanks for calling.
Thank you for taking my question. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon.
It was interesting that you guys started talking about prophecy. Me and my mentor were talking about this recently, and my instructor at my university I attend as well. So my question is in regard to Matthew 24, and I believe it's Revelation 4, wherever the sixth seal is. So the discussion was about pre-wrath rapture or pre-tribulation rapture. Now, I've been a believer of pre-tribulation rapture for quite some time, but after listening to Pastor Nelson Walters, I believe, he showed some scriptures, and he convinced me that there may be a notion of pre-wrath rapture because of these two verses that I gave you guys. And the verse in Matthew is 24:29, the signs of the coming of the Son of Man. So I just want to get your perspective on those.
All right, Pastor Brian.
Right. Well, yeah, I've read, listened to, conversed with people about the pre-wrath view as opposed to the pre-trib view. I personally don't see it. The tribulation is described as a time of trouble since that there never has been since the world was or will ever be again. So the idea that you have like the tribulation and then you have the wrath that comes after the tribulation, I just don't see it. To me, the tribulation and the wrath are the same thing. They're not two different things. So that's just one angle on some of the arguing of the pre-wrath position. But I find that the idea here, like in the Matthew passage that you referred to, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be dark and the moon will not shed its light, the stars will fall from the sky. This is just talking about the culmination of everything. It's not talking about a whole nother period now where, okay, we had the tribulation, now we've got the wrath. That's what I'm saying. They're not two different things. But that the pre-wrath person that I've read, Rosenthal and some of the other guys, that's what they try to do. They try to make a distinction between those two things. And I personally just don't think that those two things are there.
All right, Demetrius, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. How about we talk to Dennis and Hemet? Hey, Dennis, thanks for calling.
Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hey, so I just had a question. I was talking, funny that you guys are talking about prophecy. I was talking with my friend today about like how we're living in the end times today, and then I was telling him about the rapture, and Jesus said, obviously, no one knows the day or the hour, but I was thinking, doesn't it say somewhere in the Bible that like his church will basically be warned, or like we will know of the times? So like, what is something that we can look out for, and then we will say, okay, we know that it's about to go down, basically.
All right, right.
And then I also wanted to record it, so I'm gonna. Can you guys wait like 10 seconds, and then I'll put the recording on?
Yeah, we can wait 10 seconds because I wanted to add something to the previous call about the pre-wrath. If you want to look at another perspective on it, I would encourage you to get Don Stewart, who is our regular, he's a co-host here on this program. And Don has a book on the rapture, and he does such an excellent job of looking at the different positions. He does such a great job that it's really hard for a certain period of time to decide, well, what does he actually believe? When you're reading the post-trib, you're like, wow, I think Don's post-trib. When you're reading the pre-wrath, you think, wow, I think he's pre-wrath. He's not. He's neither. But what I'm saying is he gives a really fair treatment to it. Some people, they kind of build the straw man and then they dismiss it like that. Don doesn't do that. He goes in and he looks at all of the different arguments for a particular position to the point where you see, well, even with the pre-wrath, I can see how some people come to that conclusion. I just think they start in the wrong place. That's why they end in the wrong place. But Don does a tremendous job, best job I've ever seen of anybody taking and comparing the different views fairly and equitably, and then, explaining why, after all that, he still holds to a pre-tribulational view.
Yep. All right. So, Ray, can you answer Dennis's question in 60 seconds?
In 60 seconds, of course. Jesus gave a lot of the signs about the end: wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines, plagues. He said these are the beginning of birth pangs. So the signs that are happening within nature, within the world, are preparing us for the coming of the second coming of Christ. But then he said, but learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branches are tender, it puts forth its leaves. Summer is near. Even so, when you see these things, know that my coming is near, even at the door. The fig tree in the Old Testament is referred to as the nation of Israel. So the biggest super sign that we're living in the days close to be looking up for the second coming of Christ is the existence of Israel, the spotlight on Israel, everything that's happening with Jerusalem. As Brian said, the rebuilding of the fig tree, we've got a reconstituted Sanhedrin right now in Israel and Jerusalem. So, man, it's time to look up and wake up.
So talk to the person who maybe is not a Christian,
yeah,
and they're seeing all these things happen in the world. What do you tell them?
Well, tell them that the signs that we're seeing are exactly what the Bible predicted and what Jesus himself predicted. And that Israel being in the center, the epicenter of all of that is biblical. It's all about the second coming of Christ to the Mount of the Lord.
And that's why you need Jesus in your life.
Amen.
Accept
the Lord.
That's right. Pastors Brian Brodersen and Ray Bentley have been on the program today, Pastor's Perspective. And that's all the time we have for today's program. Dennis, if your recorder wasn't working, by the way, we archive all of our programs on Spotify and YouTube so you can get the answer that you wanted later today. All right. Have a great weekend. See you at church on Sunday. We'll be back on Tuesday live on Pastor's Perspective.
Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We trust you've been blessed and had your question answered. Join us Monday through Friday and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California.